Good evening, Brian. It's Tuesday. So first things first, Wonder Woman. It was so good. I'm really glad you guys liked it. I thought it was really great. It was fun to watch. It was a great story, especially lately when much of the other superhero movies that have been coming out tend to focus mostly on male superheroes. It was nice to have Wonder Woman as a lead. And I just thought in general it was also gorgeous to look at. Both the general setting of the Mascara, I don't know how you say it, but the island they live on, as well as the other settings that have the more World War I era technology and culture and clothes and the cities and all of that. It just had a really strong feel to it, and it was really fun to watch. It was also just a great story. I know that some people had some issues with it, but I think that's pretty typical. People like to complain about things, but in general, I lean towards being positive, and I did not finish the movie having any negative thoughts. I thought it was great, so I'm really glad you guys liked it too. Secondly, John Green. As you know, I'm a huge John Green fan. Obviously, the two of us are fans of the things that he and Hank do together, like Blog Brothers, but I'm also just really a big fan of John Green's books. I have all the ones that he's currently written. I have the 4 novels that he's written. I have the 2 other books he's been a part of as well, but I haven't read those yet. But I've read the 4 novels that he's written. I've also seen both movies that he has that have been made over his books. But he actually has a new book coming out very soon, and I'm super excited. As it's been mentioned on Vlog Brothers over the last few months, as things start getting closer and closer, I'm getting more and more excited, and it's finally here. But there's more than just the fact that the new book is coming out, because actually on the evening of Thursday, October 12th, Brian, which is 1 month from today, actually, Lulu and I will be going to Charlotte, North Carolina to see both John and Hank Green. That's right. They're going on tour because of the book release, and are going to be there, or here in North Carolina, there's 2 nights, but October 12th is when we're going. Each ticket comes with a signed copy of Turtles All the Way Down, and there will also probably be some book-related entertainment things, like readings, perhaps some music by John Green. I'm really hoping for that as well, and I think they might be both recording a live episode of their podcast. Speaking of, if you don't already listen to Dear Hank and John, Brian, you need to get on it because it's fantastic. I can't wait. I'm super excited. I think it's going to be an awesome time. And actually, I think the tickets may still be on sale if you happen to be interested. So the link will be in the description for that. There you go. On to the main point, Brian. This past weekend, Lulu and I went to go see It. Before I get into it too much and spoil anything or tell you how I felt about it, I feel like I need to set the stage a little bit. As you know, I'm a huge Stephen King fan, but for the longest time, I hadn't read It, which is one of his most famous books. When I heard they were remaking it this year, though, I decided I had to change that. So a few months ago, I finally started reading it. 1,138 pages later, I finished and loved the book. I loved it. It captured, it was really just the perfect quintessential classic Stephen King story, and it had everything that he's really good at included. It really was really good at capturing the ethereal and quick to fade feeling of childhood when you have a giant group of friends that you band together with and hang out with, and how things are different once you become an adult. It was a giant epic tale that built a whole community, which is one thing that Stephen's really good at, about having these stories where it's a whole town that has a humongous cast and so many characters developed. He does that really, really well. It was also just an exploration of what makes things evil and what makes us evil, which is themes that Stephen King plays with often. And finally, it was just a solid, straight-up, scary story that was really entertaining and fun to read. After finishing the book, I was in love. It's probably one of my favorite Stephen King books. I immediately watched the miniseries, and I like that one a lot too. Seeing all the things in the book come to life was very exciting, and since it was a miniseries and longer than a standard movie, it sort of did good at letting such a long story have room to breathe. Also, Tim Curry played the clown It/Pennywise in it, and Tim Curry was freaking awesome in that. He was super creepy and disconcerting, and he just did a really great job, and it was just a really great performance. So after all of that excitement, I was really psyched for the new movie to come out this year, and the more details we heard about it, the more exciting it seemed. There are a lot of Stephen King adaptations coming out around now, this year especially, but it's consistently seemed like It is the one that had the most hype and the most potential to be great. So it finally came out this past weekend, and it was awesome! It was so very good. Afterwards, and even still now, I'm having a really hard time coming up with anything to say that was wrong with it. It was probably the movie that's closest to being perfect that I've seen in a very long time. The cast was fantastic, and so much of this story really depends on you identifying and liking the group of kids who are the stars, and all of them were wonderful and fantastic. It was also just really, really scary. I thought it was solid just as a horror movie, even not being an adaptation of a great book. I thought the director did a really fantastic job of using pacing and shadow and unique camera angles, all of which helped build the tension. And then the soundtrack was also great and only accentuated all of that spookiness and scariness that the director built into it. Plus, the guy who played It/Pennywise was fantastic. Now, Don't get me wrong, I loved Tim Curry's original version, and I'm definitely not comparing the two and saying one was better than the other, but they're just both very different and both did a great job. The guy that played it in this one, Bill Skarsgård, was really just so creepy and terrifying, and he captured the mix of goofiness and creepiness and terrifyingness that the character has in the book and just did it really, really well, and it was just a really captivating, scary performance. The other monsters were also really creepy and well done too. I don't want to go too much into that because I don't want to spoil how things go, but they were really good. And just one of the things though, Brian, that I liked about it the most was that it was really, really good as an adaptation. So a lot of times adaptations can go one of two ways. They either go one way and take the basic initial concept of a story and then completely diverge and tell their own story, and that's fine. But sometimes it means that you might have liked the original story but don't end up liking the adaptation because they're so very different. Now, again, let me clarify. I'm not saying that I expect that adaptations of books to be the same. I don't go into them and say, well, you know, the book was better. No, they're different things. They're different things. Movies and books shouldn't be exactly the same. They're different media, and therefore they tell stories differently. The way that they operate and the way that you can best tell a story is different in those two things. It's like trying to take a book-shaped story and forcing it into a movie-shaped whole, and it just doesn't work if you try and do it that way. The other way that adaptations can often go is that they seem like they're trying to be too tightly bound exactly to the book, and they spend so much effort trying to do that that they don't really work as a movie in their own right. Often what they'll do is briefly touch on things from the book, just going from point to point to point to point to point real quick without any structure tying it together or plot in between, and they just rely on the fact that the audience has read the book, hopefully, to be able to string those together. It's like they touch on one thing and your brain is like, oh, I remember all the things that happened before and after that, and they can just go right to the next thing without having to actually do any of that work. And it just ends up making it feel really rushed and not fun. You just get a sense that they're trying to do too much and they're not doing any of it well. The new It movie, however, was neither of these things. It was a perfect balance. It didn't try to match the book point for point, but nor did it stray too far away and tell a totally different story. It's almost as if it took all of the book parts that made up the story initially and disassembled that, and then traded each of those parts in for like a movie counterpart, and then reassembled it in the way following movie making rules and how that same essence of story would best be told in a movie format. So it was the same story but not the same thing, if that makes sense. Some things happened in different orders and in different ways, and some things that were important in the book were important but different ways in the movie, and other things were just changed and tweaked just so that the book and the movie tell the same story but in their own ways. The movie made sense as a movie. It was fantastic in its own right, but it also had a lot of nods to the members of the audience who had read the book. I think the most important thing about it that made it great is that one thing that a lot of adaptations miss is that it felt like the book. It wasn't the exact same as the book, but the feeling of watching the movie was the same as the book. Even though things may have happened in slightly different orders or in different ways or in different manners, they made some different decisions, but it really, really felt like I was watching the same story that I had previously read. And I loved the book, and I also loved this brand new movie. Brian, I know you're not super into scary movies, and that's absolutely fine, but if you ever do want to branch out into the horror genre, you'd be hard-pressed to find a more perfect movie than this one. So Wonder Woman was great, and It was great. What other movies are you looking forward to soon? I don't know if any that are coming out soon, but if you're looking forward to any, I'd love to hear about it. I look forward to seeing that, as well as your Thursday Top 5, and have a good one, Brian.